HAMA scores decreased by 59% in both groups compared to a negligible increase in the placebo group. That is a massive drop in anxiety, published in a legitimate journal backed by solid math. On paper, it looks like a medical breakthrough. But we looked a little closer at where this data came from and found something missing. The 0 meter is set. Let the audit begin. First, the venue. Contents lists available at Science Direct Heliyon. This isn't a predatory journal. It's published by Cell Press, which means it went through standard peer review, and their summary reflects exactly what their numbers claim. The journal and narrative check out. Now the numbers. HAMA scores decreased by 59% in both groups compared to a negligible increase in the placebo group. The math here is completely internally consistent. The percentages match the raw score tables perfectly, and they didn't hover near borderline significance to manufacture a win. The internal numbers are exactly right. The foundation is next. This randomized, double-blinded, placebo-controlled, parallel arm study was conducted at Normal Hospital. They filed their plan before enrolling anyone. That's the gold standard for clinical trials. Trial design is completely solid. No issues here. Next, the patient assignments. The randomization sequence was generated using the balanced randomization program. The patients were randomly assigned, the groups were even, and the doctors couldn't peek at the list. Right below this, they confirmed the use of sealed envelopes. Both sides were kept blind exactly as required. Randomization, concealment, blinding all clear. Now for the statistical engine. The data was analyzed using non-parametric longitudinal factorial design. They used a hard-to-fool statistical method, one that doesn't assume people's stress scores follow a neat pattern over time. Their charts properly reflect this data without any deceptive zooming. We also ran a headcount check on their math. If you have 20 students and report an average test score, the total has to be a whole number of points. Theirs was clean. Appropriate statistical controls. Exactly right. But here, perfection looks strange. The study screened 72 participants and enrolled 60. There were 12 screen failures and no dropouts or withdrawals during the study. A 60-day trial where not a single person moved, quit, or missed a follow-up. The baseline stats show the group started evenly matched. But there is absolutely no calculation showing how they decided 60 people was enough to prove their case. Sample sizing and attrition are partially sound, but not fully. Let's jump back to the very first page to check their claims. Conclusion: Ashwagandha extract with 35% withanolide glycosides was significantly effective and reduced morning serum cortisol. They highlight cortisol here as their big win. But jump to page 3, and their registered primary outcome was actually the HAM anxiety score. They quietly shifted the spotlight. Outcome fidelity is complicated. To understand what's really happening here, we have to skip all the way to the disclosures at the end. The authors declare that they have no known competing financial interests. They claim complete independence. But Arjuna Natural provided the capsules for the trial, and the manufacturer directly profited from the results. Following publication, the company's joint managing director issued a press release to promote the study's positive findings to sell more capsules. They never disclosed to readers that the company supplying the pills would immediately use the data for marketing. Funding disclosure. There's nothing here. If you're finding this analysis valuable, consider subscribing so you don't miss our bite-sized breakdowns. One final problem. The datasets used and analyzed during the current study are available from the corresponding author on reasonable request. They never release the raw data. They ask you to trust the corresponding author. We checked his record. He has a retracted paper on record, a prior study on ashwagandha that was formally pulled. A retraction means the work was found to be unreliable enough that the journal asked for it back. That previous paper misappropriated someone else's data. Data availability. There's nothing here. 74 out of 100 and under normal circumstances, that's a passing grade. But this study called itself an independent trial when the manufacturer supplied the pills and the lead author had a history of fabricating data in this exact field. That's not a design weakness, it's a severe breach of trust. That single deception means every clinician who reads this paper is treating it as stronger evidence than it actually is. That triggers an automatic discard. Independent labs have confirmed that ashwagandha can reduce stress, but this specific paper can't be the one you cite to prove it.